Welcome to Comic Wars. Think of the show as Fight Night, but without the mess of actual combat. The data will speak for itself before the outcome, but in case it doesn't, we will break all of it down in the outcome at the end of the show. Without further ado, let's jump into the overview. So, how this all breaks down, if we had a guest or guess, then this is where we would introduce them and get their guesses and see kind of what their first initial thoughts would be in this comic war. But as seeing we don't have any guests tonight, we're going to move right into the background details. And what the background details are going to basically describe who the characters are, what they do on their daily lives, such as like an occupation, or maybe they're just a full-time vigilante, costume activist. Who knows, vampire hunter even. I mean, it could be all sorts of things. This is going to go over their height, their weight, their age, things like this that could actually matter but may not actually be a huge factor in the actual combat scenario. After that, then we get into the feats. This is going to be where we can take a look at their greatest strengths, their greatest weaknesses, their durabilities, their speed, their agility, combat, what kind of powers they might have, things like that nature. After that, then we would just break all of this data down. This would be if they've got a really, really powerful punch. We would calculate how powerful is this punch. If they can take 50 caliber gunshot wounds like it's nothing and without being phased at all, we would calculate what kind of damage that would take, or what kind of resistance that would take, rather. Just like we would also look at agility, how fast they're dodging, how quickly they can close distances. We're going to go and look at what kind of damage their gadgets can do. What kind of things can their gadgets do, if they have any? Or what kind of things can their power actually do? And what kind of damage they could be doing, what kind of confusion, all sorts of things like this, just to break every single thing down. Then after that, then we'll get into the character pros and cons. This is where we essentially match the characters up. We give the data and we kind of show what is going to be their strengths and their weaknesses against each other. And in some cases, maybe even against themselves. After that, then we get into the guest analysis. Once again, if we had guests, this is where they would actually look at all that data we've already gone over, and we'd have a little bit of a discussion. Seeing as we have no guests, we would jump right into the outcome right after, which is going to be describing who would win in this comic war and why. What kind of percentage it would take, what kind of scenarios it would take for the opposing team to actually, or opponent to win. Alright, so let's jump right into our first combatant, Captain Meow-Meow. She hails from Crowworks Comics, of my creation, of course. And her real name is Amber Norris. She is 21 years old. She is approximately 5 foot 8 inches tall. She weighs 140 pounds, and her occupation is a veterinarian assistant. Her areas of operation, well, it's just one area, and that's just Rain City, and that is it. So her personality, well, she's incredibly focused, very intelligent, she's passive-aggressive most of the time, incredibly sarcastic, and she's overly critical of herself, mostly about Daniel Parker going missing. As for some little tidbits about her, well, she loves Daniel Parker, she's a supporter of Crow, and she has a cat named Leonard. What kind of feats is she bringing to combat here? Well, first we have her strength. So this is where we're going to be covering her power at the same time as we're covering everything else. Normally, she's no different than your average 21-year-old female. She has roughly the same strengths, weaknesses, and all this. However, she has a superpower that does kick in for her strength and her speed and agility. But for her strength, she has the focus of a tiger. She focuses on a Feliformia, which is going to be your mongooses, your tigers, your cheetahs, your lions, saber-toothed tiger, things like this. Anything in that species. She focuses on it. She can focus on one at a time normally. She's going to go and take over some of these traits. Focus of tiger, for example, she's capable of lifting approximately 1,200 pounds, and she has a swipe force of roughly 23,622 pounds per square inch. Yikes. As for her durability, well, she has a leather and Kevlar bodysuit, so can she withstand bullets? Yes. Would they still hurt her? Yes. But she can also be able to go and withstand knife wounds, things like slashing attacks. Yes, she's actually going to have a high resistance to slashing. Would they still hurt? Of course they would. But it's also a lightweight, very durable suit. As for her speed and agility, well, she has the focus of the cheetah. And her top speed so far, she can sprint 60 miles per hour. Whew, would not want to play tag with her. As for her combat capabilities, well, she doesn't have any martial arts training at all. So, more or less just a brawler. As for her ingenuity, well, she can't allow herself to, quote, go feral, end quote, which essentially just means she loses control. We're going to get more into this in just a second, though. This is actually very powerful. We'll get right into it. As for her powers, well, this is how we're going to explain it. So she gets enhanced senses. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, you name it. She's got enhanced senses. They are far above the average human being. Even heightened human beings that have trained their whole lives. She's got senses that even go past that. On top of that, she has, if she focuses on a specific Feliformia species, it allows her to gain that species' traits, i.e. with the tiger, she gets strength. With the cheetah, she gets speed. The mongoose, which is her other one, she's also got access to. Currently, she gains access to increased in agility. Just, we're talking ridiculous agility. To break this down, I haven't covered it in comics yet, as for what her agility is like, but she can dodge bow and arrow shots. She can dodge that. I mean, she can't really dodge anything past that. That's just basically how that breaks down. So, but she also has an increased poison resistance, which essentially borders on immunity. Not many poisons could actually do her a whole lot of damage. Worst that can happen is she might get a little sick. But so far, no poison that she's even tried on herself is even able to really do anything past that. And we're talking some pretty serious poisons. But, on top of that, she can also control nearby Feliformia to attack. And that's roughly got about a 10-foot range on that one. So she can't control something 300 feet away to go and charge into battle. No, it's going to be roughly about 10 feet away. So if she's in downtown Raiden City, specific areas, she's going to have access to Feliformia because there's going to be alley cats all over the place. If she's in a zoo, she has access to those wild animals. And then she can also see clearly in dark, so she has night vision. And she can enter the feral state, which relinquishes all control, all of it, to her primal animalistic side, which also, on top of that, allows her to fully utilize the traits of every Feliformia. Now, this is where things get a little interesting, because she's got access to things like the focus of the lion, she's got focus of the panther, she's got focus of the saber-toothed tiger. She gains a ton of focuses. However, really what they all add up to, they don't stack. This isn't something we're stacking. They're not going to multiply by each other. They just give her even more things, and they just add more in, but they don't add on top of it. So her strength doesn't increase past the 1,200 pounds. Even though things like the saber-toothed tiger, which are not listed, she cannot access without going feral. But the saber-toothed tiger also allows her to grow longer claws. This essentially allows her to burst out of her claw, or out of her suit and all this. She grows incredibly powerful claws, just to break it in essence. She grows massive fangs, canines to be specific. Her hair goes wild. She develops a very, very powerful hide and a mane. She gets incredibly powerful, but she doesn't have any control, and she essentially becomes a wild animal. This is a weakness in itself, if you want to consider. Some armored claw boots, which are also tungsten claws and carbon fiber shin and foot plating. I do apologize for the internet. We might have to redo this later in the week, but I'm going to continue. So she does have some armor, and it is going to be on her feet and on her shins. So that's going to be essentially her shielding, if you will. So that's what she brings to combat, but what about her opponent? This is where we get into Debug, another one of my creations from Crowworks Comics. His real name is Antonio Rolfe. He is 20 years old. He is approximately 6 foot 4 inches tall. He's 180 pounds. His occupation is a computer programmer and software developer over at Steam Tech Enterprises. As for his areas of operation, well, this is where things get a little interesting. Rand City is directly where his area of operation is. However, he can... Might have to redo this stream tomorrow. Lovely. Alright, so what kind of feats is he bringing? Well, Debug, now this is where things get a little interesting because his powers, they're things that they do affect things like his strength and things like that, to an extent. But this is what you get from him. Now, normally, his strength, average human male. His durability, well, he shrugged off hits from several 50 caliber rounds while moving toward the Locust Gang attackers over in Steam Tech Enterprises when they came in for a second go. Keep in mind, this is also how he got his powers, because the Locust Gang attacked Steam Tech Enterprises when Franklin Cleveland, also known as Steam Tech, came home. Instead of continuing on to another big tech company to go and get some really high-end, high-tech prosthetics, he had some of his own back at Steam Tech Enterprises, and he wanted them fitted. So he went back to go get them fitted while the Locust Gang got wind of this and attacked. This entire attack was foiled by Crow. But during this attack, Antonio Rolfe was also inside of Overworld Plus, inside the game. Well, the power was shut down, and he was stuck inside the game. The game very much is it's very similar to a game that comes from this anime called Sword Art Online. It's very similar in a lot of ways, except it's essentially his soul was bonded with the game itself. Now, it doesn't mean that the soul is now inside the game and strictly. No, essentially his entire being, because his life essence was inside the game. He was attached to this hardware, and what ended up happening was he was stuck in there for a couple of hours. So he didn't die. His bodily functions did start to shut down. Very, very briefly, they did start to shut down. But when his life essence was brought right back into his body, his soul was brought back into his body, he came back to life. His body came back to life. But he had some peculiar powers. But this is where he gets this. And when they came back for round 2, using his powers, he was actually able to shrug off 50 caliber rounds while moving toward the Locust Gang attackers. As for speed and agility, he's just got average human male speed and agility. He's nothing super special there. As for combat capabilities, he has no martial arts training either. But his ingenuity lies in his intelligence. He swaps between different equipped sets using his Pixelmancy power to confuse, intimidate, and overwhelm his opponents. We'll get more into this in just a second. So, how his powers work. Pixelmancy. The user can conjure equipped sets from the Overworld Plus MMORPG. Like I said, he developed powers because his soul, his life essence, was put into the game, and it essentially kept his life essence barely alive, just absorbing the power from the game itself. This includes any kind of updates that come to the game, they can also go into him. However, Steam Tech himself isn't trying to make him overly powerful, and it's not out of a jealousy, it's he doesn't know what it'll do to him. And we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it because there's more that will come far later into the comics. I've already got the story written for up to 3 arcs, 3 seasons, if you will. Big story arcs for Debug, and it'll come at a time. So you guys will get that eventually. But the user is limited to swapping between 6 equipped sets. He cannot swap between any more than that. Additionally, Pixelmancy can affect and alter program, technology, and magical items. So yes, he can instant hack program like keypads. He can just instantly open doors like that. He can go and log into encrypted files or something like that. He can actually go and just get into it if he wants to. That's the great thing about his power. Pixelancy is incredibly powerful. It's a useful little utility. But as for his sets, he comes equipped with the Gilded Adventurer. Now you're going to see there's a few of these. He has 2 Gladius equipped with Gilded Hilts. You can essentially see what he's got up here. This is the Gilded Adventurer set he's got equipped currently, which what you can see on the screen. This allows the user to perfect or to perfectly complete any skill that the set's weapon is capable of using in Overworld Plus, which includes the Rising Cleave, very much similar to the attack from Final Fantasy known as Clim Hazard. The user stabs an opponent with the blade of the sword facing upward. The user then rips upward through the opponent 10 feet in the air. The user raises the sword above the user's head and cleaves the opponent with the blade facing toward the ground. Now, before I continue on with these skills, once they've got their target, they go for it. They don't stop. He will go towards the target. However, there are things called misses, which do occur. Now, this is where the video game world and his world kind of meld in a way. These misses, for instance, he can miss. So if he does miss a stab, he misses it. But if he's in the middle of it and then a miss occurs, this is where glitches occur. Now, this is where he can get himself lodged into things. For instance, if he's cleaving a moving object and it's moving, right? And he's moving with it, he'll be going upward still. If it's moving upward, he only goes up 10 feet. If it still keeps going and he's still stuck in it, technically, the pixels are still stuck in, he can be dragged along with it, and that means he'll be going through whatever it hits, but his body itself will glitch, which means he can get himself stuck into things. And when his body does finally unglitch, his body is now stuck inside the building. He doesn't replace the material, so it could kill him. Just bringing this up because this is an important part of his Gilded Adventurer sets. That's why they are risky, and they are considered finisher type of attacks and sets to be used outside of Overworld Plus. Next, he's got the Sword Barrier. User swings their sword at such a fast pace that allows the user to be unharmed from arrows and bullets. To everyone around the user, it appears if the user has dozens of sword slash after images around them. So they're being swung at an incredibly high rate. However, if something were to come in and touch it, yes, they are swords, it will slash. I'm sure there's gonna be that one person, well, it didn't say it would slash me. Yeah, well, it will. As for his next Gilded Adventurer set, he comes equipped with a Gladius with a gilded hilt and a steel buckler and hardened leather armor. It's the same set. Allows the user to perfectly complete any skill that the set's weapon and shield is capable of using Overworld Plus. This is where we get his other abilities. Phalanx. The user gets into a defensive position and their aura gains heavy resistance to physical, non-magical strikes. Physical, this includes gunshots. This includes slashes, punches, kicks, explosions. Now this is where things get interesting. The explosive blast itself, it may be physical. However, the actual concussive blast, it does not go into the same category. It falls outside of physical when it goes along with how this Phalanx ability works. Is it a physical kind of damage? Yes. But does it go and fall under Phalanx's physical non-magical strikes? No, it falls under a magical strike at that point. So the concussive blast will actually hurt him still normally. But when it comes down to like the explosion itself, the initial that can, and the damage it's that's where it breaks down. It's a little weird because it's physical, but it's also non-physical. So that means it's still he's gonna almost receive normal damage from it. So things like the fire, that'll still damage him. But the shrapnel itself, it'll reduce the damage from it. As far as the other one is Disarm and Destroy. User slams their shield in the face or body with the intent to stun and followed up with a stab into the opponent's body. Next, we have the Salamandrake set, which comes equipped with a huge two-handed cleaver and magic-infused molten armor that doesn't burn the user. It is molten armor, keep this in mind. Doesn't hurt him, it's not hot. And as we broke down in the previous fight with Full Metal Alchemist, this is not carbon-based. This is pixels. But they're magical pixels, so they don't fall into that category at all. So trying to break this down, it doesn't really break down the same way. But it allows the user to launch themselves 50 feet in the air and glide on wings of dragon fire, which can only be put out once the user has touched the ground, or if the fire is struck by water magic. The user can also gather energy into their weapon in order to launch dragon fire crescent slashes up to 30 feet away. Water-based attacks do double damage to the player equipped with this set. That means if he jumps into a puddle of water, that does hurt him. I'm just going to make that very, very blunt. Water, period, hurts him. I'm not talking blood. No. Pure water. So if you've got mud, that's mud. What'll end up happening is, for instance, can blood hurt him? There's water in blood. Can that hurt him? No, it cannot. Regular water will go through, but it has to be pure water. We're not talking holy water. We are talking pure water. If there's water with a little bit of sediment, sediment will get separated. The water itself will actually come through and hit. However, it has to be a lot of water because still the heat is still there. Does it affect him? No, because it's magical heat and it does not affect the user. But it does affect things around him. Will it melt around? Will it melt asphalt? It can. You have to be very careful with this. This is why I waited to go and get into this a little more, because there's a little more trickiness to his feats here. Next we have the Trent set, or the Treant set. A one-handed sword with 4 small branch blades sprouting from the blade. It comes equipped with a wooden buckler and magic-infused bark plate armor. It allows the user to summon roots to capture enemies up to 20 feet away. The roots sap life energy away from the captured foes, which then replenish health to the user. This means if he's wounded, it will actually start to recover the wound. The roots only stay active for about 10 seconds, and fire-based attacks do double damage to the player. Said yes, a match would damage him. It would not feel good. If somebody has access to a flamethrower, it would absolutely devastate him in this set. Next we get an Earthen Guard set, which comes equipped with a broadsword with amber gems in the hilt, a steel tower shield, and heavy steel plate armor with steel scale mail underneath. Allows the user to summon rock walls from the ground. If the user is able to store energy into this set for 60 seconds straight, one stone golem, which is approximately 10 feet tall, 1,800 pounds, will materialize to aid the user in combat. Keep in mind, it is made of pixels, magical pixels. But it also it's got the density of granite. So just to break that down, so can it be broken just like granite? Yes. But once again, something wants to transmute or wants to absorb stone, it doesn't work the same way. It's magical pixels. It can't do that. But it will materialize in battle to aid the user in combat. Nature and wind-based attacks do double damage to the player equipped with this set, which means he has to be very careful. If there's a windstorm outside, it will actually start to kind of erode the rock walls and all this. If somebody were to use air pressure as a weapon, this could definitely do a lot of damage to him. He can chip away real quick through his stuff. And nature-based attacks, so things that are using roots, using things like that, they will actually start to chip away at his rocks and even at his armor a little bit. Next, he comes equipped with a Jelly Golem set. Comes with 2 Shatter Blades. Now think blades that essentially he can shatter at any time, and magically they can reattach. He can throw them, the old shattered pieces, and they can always come back at any time. Think kind of like Magneto's power with his magnetism. He could do that with the shattered blades. The clothing that it comes equipped with, it also comes with a thin layer of magical slime that moves to catch incoming attacks automatically. Thing is, the clothes themselves, they don't appear. It's whatever he's wearing at the time. This magical slime essentially goes over him. And they move instantly to incoming attacks automatically. Extreme heat forces the slime away from the location of wherever the extreme heat was coming into. So something like a match, it'll move away from just from the heat initially. But once again, the slime itself will sense that it's not an extreme heat and will not move all the way away, and it will actually devour it. But something like a flamethrower, napalm, it can't extinguish, and it'll go away from it, which allows him to also get hurt. So, what do you guys think so far? What do you think wins this? Well, we've already done the data analysis at the same time for the most part. We're going to break a few things down here. When it comes to her swing, is that going to be enough to... Is that enough needed to go and break through things? It's certainly enough that it can damage some things. Not to mention, she also comes equipped with some tungsten claws, which is also going to allow her to chip away at things. Now, this is granite we're talking. This is also what was able to take a hit. Now, this is using everything he's got to be able to go and withstand the Locust Gang's 50 caliber armor, or 50 caliber shots, right? So, this is where things get a little interesting. They can withstand it, but he has to constantly replenish it. It is draining. Because Pixelancy itself, which I should have included in this, it does actually drain energy. All the powers in this, there's always a catch to everything. If there's magic, what has it got? There's a catch to it. The powers, what's the catch? It drains energy. It literally drains energy from the user. It's not something that can just be oh, okay, no problem, I can just keep using this all day, not a problem. No, it severely, tires them out. But, back in the data, we look at Captain Meow-Meow's focus and the tiger. Well, now, she can almost lift the golem. And her swipe force is enough to do damage. It's the same thing she has to really worry about. And this is something that's incredibly interesting here, because her other sets, this is incredibly effective against. And her speed, she's gonna be able to outrun anything he can do. She can switch her focus at any time. She can be mid-swing and just sprint out of there. She can go into the cheetah. Now she has incredible agility and poison resistance. Keep in mind, her strength goes away, but she still has tungsten claws. She can still do damage, and he doesn't have much difference in durability. He has to switch to different armors as well. So this is a battle of focusing. Who's going to be able to actually outfocus? Now this is where we need to go in the background a little bit here, because now we're going to get into the pros and cons immediately as we have to. You look at their personality. She's incredibly focused. Now if we look at Debug, this is where things are a little different. He's not much of a focuser. He doesn't really want to fight. So he's going to look at anything that's going to take non-violent approaches. Trent set. That can be used in a non-violent setting. He can use that to trap her. Try as many times as he can to trap. Then he's also got the Salamandrake. He can use the heat itself to try and keep her back. But couldn't she run in and swing and dip out? Absolutely. There's a lot of different things here. This is where things get a little more, they're a lot more evenly matched and a lot might think. But they're both highly intelligent, so now they're going to be using their heads a lot. So, we're going to go and just go down the list now. So we know that one's got more focus than the other. That is going to play a slight factor. It's not going to go into our list too much. But we do know when it comes to focusing, who's going to be able to alter faster. She's more focused, which means that she's going to be a lot more fine-tuned than he is. He's highly intelligent. You look at their intelligence, ratings, he's at a higher intelligent rating than she is. And I put this, that's why I put emphasis, highly intelligent versus just intelligent. He is smarter, but he lacks her focus. Whoops. So let's look at strength. Well, she's capable of lifting 1,200 pounds and a swipe force of almost 20. Well, yeah, getting close to about 24,000 psi. That's incredibly dangerous. That is more than enough to go and instantly defeat an opponent. And we're talking straight up dispatch. Gank. End a life. Yeah, she's capable of that with one strike. With one swipe, if she goes into her tiger focus. He doesn't have any strength feeds that are going to be comparable. Just to put it bluntly, he doesn't have a strength feed. His come down strictly to power. They don't alter his strength. He's just average human male. So this automatically, this is the strength feed. We're going to go and do something we don't normally do, which is we're going to go and put a double plus. Because she outclasses him to such an extreme amount. So, we've got copy Meow-Meow with a double plus already on strength. The strength is going to be a huge feat here. So, what else does she bring to this? Well, let's look at durability. Well, durability, he's going to have single-handedly. She just has a leather shell, essentially, with an actual Kevlar bodysuit underneath. That's not enough to really say, oh, I'm going to be able to withstand this. This is where you got to get into her feral ability. Now, she gets increased durability, but it's nothing like this. He can shrug off 50 caliber rounds. Now, he's constantly replenish rock walls, and he has to switch into phalanx and all this, but he has to go and this is where it comes down to him and his ingenuity. He has to switch it in a certain manner, in a certain pattern. So this is where we're going to, or less, we're going to give him a plus here, well, a double plus, because she doesn't really have any durability, and not enough. She can withstand slashing attacks, but we're talking magical slashes. We're talking from weapons that don't dull. Okay. Next, we have the speed and agility. This is where things get kind of funky because really, he's just average. He has capabilities of moving faster, but that involves Salamandrake, and that is it. And even then, that comes down to agility. Can he use it to dodge? He could. And paired with some of his other sets, he could use this to essentially turn it into more of like a durability evade. So he's going to go into the attack, but he's going to be able to essentially absorb it so he can go in for a strike. But you look at it, she's going to be able to outclass him on speed. He's not going to be able to keep up with her. No, he's outclassed, but he can kind of keep himself in check here, with her. Now this is where we're getting martial prowess. Well, they're evenly matched, so I'm just going to X this section out because it doesn't matter. They're even. Doesn't matter. They're brawlers. As for ingenuity, she relies on going feral, which is going to enhance all of her abilities, but she becomes very primitive, and her intelligence now goes away. So she's got to stay in the battle and deal with his confusion and intimidation and overwhelming type of techniques and swapping. So if she can manage her way through that, their ingenuity, hers is kind of a disadvantage. It's a plus and a minus for both. Well, plus and minus for her, rather, but because if given certain situations, that's actually quite ingenious to use. She can't break free from it as easy. She literally requires Leonard to do so. she requires him to talk her out of it. That's the downside, which I didn't mention, which I probably should have, but end of the day, that's how that works. She requires Leonard to talk her out of it. Now, there's more going into it as we get into her story later on, but for right now, that's all you guys need to know. Leonard is her way out of her fatal state. So, they're going to basically be evenly matched, or she's going to go and fall behind. Essentially is how this breaks down on ingenuity. And after that, now we get into powers. Now, they both come equipped with powers, but somebody has actually got some gadgetry, if you will, to some extent. Powers, she's got to focus. No, she can focus very easily. He's got to still focus and do his gear swapping techniques. And all he has to really do is, if he gets overwhelmed in combat and he's just kind of, he just basically doesn't want to fight. Gets in that kind of like anxious kind of mode, he might slip up and call the wrong set, which can cause him to lose the fight. Cost him his life real easy. However, we know that he's been in combat in the heat of battle and has been able to swap. He knew exactly what he needed to do. He had the plan. Once he's got his plan, a little prep time is all he needs. The anxiety can go away. It's just combat anxiety. Stage fright, if you will, is also part of it. If he gets over it, he's perfectly fine, and he would be able to go toe-to-toe for the most part with her power-wise on swapping. But she's got a much higher level of focus than he does. And that focus comes from her love of being a Parker, and she blames herself. So she feels she needs to thrust herself into getting things done, so that way hopefully maybe she can find him something. That's where that breaks down. But when it comes to the powers, hers, it's straightforward. Antonio, or Debug if you will, his are a little interesting. So let's break hers down real quick, and this is where we have to kind of break hers down a bit. So, we know she's not going to have to worry about poison. So the mongoose is going to be fine only for agility. He's in with his shatter blades, so he goes into that form. She doesn't have her strength, she doesn't have her speed, but she has agility. Okay, now, a little minor to this. Yeah, does she move a little faster? Yes, technically she's going to move a little faster. She already has enhanced senses, no matter what. She has night vision. She can always control cats and other Feliformia that are nearby to attack. So she's going to be a type that would be trying to lure an opponent into an area where there's animals, so Feliformia, to attack her prey. Using kind of like almost a gang mentality type of guerrilla tactics. But if she needs to, she can enter the feral state, which, like I said, it gives her certain advantages, but some severe disadvantages. So, comes down to it, power-wise, she's got a huge strength here if she goes near feral, and because she can swap so quickly with her abilities, this is going to give her the ability she can get in, get a strike with Tiger, right? Go in with Cheetah, swap to Tiger, get that really devastating blow, swap back, she can swap to Mongoose so she can avoid, go back in a Tiger strike. She can stay in combat. And she can be right up on him. She's going to be able to dodge pretty much, in fact, she'll be able to dodge pretty much every single attack he's got. She's got agility on him pretty handily. You include this, her swapping ability, just between these three, without even having to go feral, she's already a match. She goes feral animals will dodge too. But she's not going to be thinking ahead, let's plan. She's going to be just going for the kill at that point. So, which is also going to go and leave her open. Sometimes animals will push themselves into a position where they're very vulnerable, but the risk might be greater than the reward. Sometimes the reward is greater than the risk. Maybe she'll take a little damage just so she can get that finishing blow. But, like I said, there's some downsides to it. So when we're looking at powers, let's break his down real quick. Just to kind of show you, her powers are really, really formidable when it comes to combat against him. But now when we look at his sets, like I said, we've already looked at his initial set here. The Gilded Adventurer, he's got both of them. Same exact type of thing, except one is dual wielding and the other is sword and shield. He goes the sword and shield route. He comes equipped with a defensive measure, plus he's got some good counterattacks. He comes with the regular one where he's got defense. He's gonna have some durability pretty much through every single one of his sets here, and that's the big strength of his ability, what he's currently got. His equipped sets here. Almost every single one of them have defensive capabilities. He can recover from attacks. He can, once he sees it, now he's got, okay, well, this is a strategy that his opponent is using. So maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to continually use that. Would you do that against a chess player? You beat him one time, are you going to use that same strategy? Probably not. And if you do, you might use it a few times, but then you're going to have to swap it up because now they're going to know how that strategy works. This is how it works with Debug. You can't really use the same strategy again and again and again on him, because unless it is a fail-proof strategy, which in combat with a guy like this, good luck. You're not going to be finding yourself with a whole lot of those. But he does come equipped with some safety measures on every single one of his sets right here. He likes to observe. He'd rather not fight, and he'd rather just kind of, I don't want to fight. Come on, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your energy. And he'll do it. He'll allow you to waste your energy on him. And then you can just go in for the kill if he needs to. This is very much, very, very similar to the Feral State. I would argue, and this is how I would argue, that, again, her power, for the most part, pretty evenly matched with him. But if used incorrectly, even once, it can cost her. So her Feral State is incredibly situational. And if used at the wrong time, she feels too overwhelmed. Well, she's overly critical of herself. If somebody's overly critical of themselves, they tend to doubt, and they tend to get impatient. And that's what she does too. So, this is where you're going to get, she's got some plus and minuses on her. She's got given situations, she's gonna do well in, and you've got situations where she's gonna do incredibly bad. So, we've broken everything down here. So what do you guys think so far? Who do you think wins? Is it Captain Meow-Meow or is it Debug? Who wins this comic war? I'll give you guys a little more thoughts, a little more time to think on this, but we're about to break it down. All right, this is how this breaks down. I would argue this is roughly about a 60% favor for Captain Meow-Meow and a 40% favor for Debug. No, hear me out. If you were to look at this, the plus and minuses, okay? Their strength and durability, they basically cancel each other out. Now, for the most part, pretty evenly matched. Comes to martial prowess, they're the same. They're brawlers. One's highly intelligent, one's intelligent. So they're gonna be looking at the same thing. Okay, we're gonna go for precise strikes. We're gonna try and end this quickly. One's gonna be thinking ahead a lot more, and the other one's gonna be staying focused. While the other one can also be, while one is gonna be more leaning towards anxiety is gonna be more of an issue. While the other one, the longer the battle prolongs, anxiety becomes an issue for them, and patience becomes one of their biggest weaknesses. As for their ingenuity, this is where things are going to get kind of tricky, because their ingenuity and their powers are where this battle really aligns itself. Okay? Because when it comes down to it, Captain Meow-Meow's got her agility, which is going to be as good, roughly. Give or take. She's more mobile than Debug. Is she going to be wasting a lot more energy? She would be. So she has to end the battles faster. But that's all it takes. Now you go and you throw any animal, any Feliformia in this, and this is over. She's now got a huge disadvantage, or a huge advantage against Debug here, because now she's got essentially distractions. That if he doesn't do anything about it, she can command them to go and do certain direct attacks, which could be not necessarily fatal, but they could be a heavy damage point for him. For instance, if they're fighting in a zoo, or if they're able to get into an area like that, or a jungle, a forest, in the city, you get some kind of a feral cat, and especially you get into a zoo or into the woods or something like this, jungle, you get bigger cats. The bigger the cats, the bigger the threat to Debug, and then she's going to just go in for that. Essentially the takedown. Now, can he still have his neck broken? Yes. Now that's the thing I wanted to go and really emphasize on this. Just because he's got armor on doesn't mean his joints, his bones, and all this can't be broken just the same. They can. Then he has weak points. If his helmet isn't attached to his the rest of his armor and all this, couldn't his head just be yanked off, or whatever needs to be happening? Couldn't that occur? Yes. Things like this can still occur. That's where this breaks down very interestingly. Against Edward Elric, you're looking essentially like they're going toe-to-toe just combat. You look with Captain Meow-Meow versus him, it's going to be who's going to be able to get to the opponent's weak point faster. Well, now you got mobility. Debug's not even nearly as mobile. Doesn't even come close. Now, it's not a huge disadvantage because he does have ways to go and have a form of agility. He can close the gap. Not super quick, but he can close it. And she's going to be trying to get in close. And he's going to be very dependent on the Salamandric armor to do this. And he's going to have to go into the Jelly Golem armor. He's going to have to swap. He's going to have to do his gear swapping ability to go and do this. So he's going to be entirely focused on doing this. Well, she can get in and she can avoid all these things. He can be throwing his scatter blades, and it's not necessarily going to be enough. She's got enhanced senses. She'll be able to hear things. She'll have kind of a feeling, not necessarily kind of like, like a spider sense, if you will, like a sixth sense. Oh, there's something coming at me. Oh, dodge this way. No, she's going to hear it. She's going to hear it through the air. On top of that, she's going to be able to smell things differently, taste things. These senses do play a factor. Ask any big-time martial artist. I'll tell you this. Ones that have focused and honed in on their senses, they will tell you this. Things like taste and smell can play an actual factor in combat. They can. Now, it just depends, because is another sense taken away? And that's when your hearing, for instance, your sight's taken away. Well, now your hearing is now going to be slightly enhanced over that. And we know this occurs. Look at, for instance, people that, for instance, they can't hear. Can they see better generally? Yeah. But now if you start taking away their senses, what do? You're essentially enhancing other parts. Now, that's not always the case. And there's some people that their senses are no different than yours or mine. Normally, and they might be deaf or they might be blind. Their other senses don't pick up the slack. That does happen. But more often than not, other senses tend to kind of pick up the slack a little bit. So, that being said, this is why it falls 60% in Captain Meow-Meow's favor, because her mobility, plus her power, it's a positive and a negative for her. That's how this works. Her ingenuity and her powers are both a positive and negative. If she uses them incorrectly, that's where the problems come in. But if it's an in and out fight, she's able to kind of get in and out, and she's able to just juke him and then switch in right for the right moment, just swing right in and get that weak point, the battle's hers every time. But she's very reliant on the faster fights, and more often than not, these fights would be fast. She's going to close that distance. It's going to intimidate the heck out of them. The battle goes straight to Captain Meow-Meow. As for Friday's episode, we have Wolf versus Batwoman. It's another Crowworks Comics versus DC Comics. But who's going to win? Red Hood sure couldn't take on Wolf. But what about Batwoman? Can she match up against Rain City's hotshot assassin? We'll see on Friday. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys most likely tomorrow night for another, well, not another, a recap of tonight's episode. Hopefully the internet is doing a little better and it's not as shoddy. But for those that are tuning in on our normal schedule, then Friday will be at this episode here, Wolf versus Batwoman. It'll be episode 14. Thank you guys for tuning in.